Living in Virginia, you're in the fast lane on the information superhighway. We've invested $3 billion in Virginia's broadband network to give you one of the fastest internet connection speeds in the world, so you can build relationships, bring new business to our state, and meet the future of education. It's amazing what we can do together. Visit VCTA.com to learn how broadband connects the Commonwealth.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. We're real pleased to have Buddy Fowler from the State House of Delegates here in Richmond with us this morning. It's a little snow outside, a little cold, but you guys have been working hard for at least a week now, as I understand.
Yes, first of all, thank you, Woody, for the opportunity to come here and speak with you and my constituents. It's a little bit of snow doesn't stop folks from Hanover County. And so anyway, I made it in pretty early this morning. But yes, we've hit the ground running. We've started to organize our committees here in the last couple of days. And so I think probably the beginning of, probably on Monday, the committees are going to be starting to hear bills and consider bills and, report some bills and maybe reject some other ones. But we'll be in full swing very soon.
So your constituents understand you're in a different building now as well.
I think a lot of them do. I've in my newsletter that I send out, I talk about, the Pocahontas building now, not the General Assembly building. But again, a lot of my constituents, the phone number hadn't changed and neither has the email. So they're still managing to, to find me and make me aware of their concerns.
And as we speak, the old General Assembly building is being torn down. It will be refurbished, and hopefully you'll be back over there in 4 years.
Yeah, it would be really nice if we were back over there saying 2 years, but it's my understanding it's going to be 4 years. So I guess we'll have gotten used to this building by then.
Lots of new faces around here, as I understand
Yes,
it. There are
sir.
15 new Democrats, and we were talking before, maybe 3 or 4 new Republican members of the House of Delegates.
That's correct. It's been a lot of turnover in the House. I just got my new license plate today from DMV, and my license plate, I was number 74, and now I am number 57.
Wow.
So that gives you an idea
Wow.
of the turnover, because that's based on your seniority.
Sure.
So it's a lot of turnover. I still haven't learned all of the new people, but I've learned a lot of them. And some of them are on the committees that I'm on, and I've had been very pleased to have conversations with them, and I think that obviously we're going to work together on a lot of issues. There's going to be some issues where we disagree,
Sure.
and like I say, I'm hopeful that we can find middle ground on hopefully a majority of those, and then again just move Virginia forward. I think is everyone's goal.
And a few more cameras around here as well, as I understand, especially in the
Yeah.
committees.
Well-
The full committee hearings are now streamed live.
That's correct. Everybody's all in favor of transparency, and so I guess it's one of those things to be careful what you ask for, because a lot of these committees are. I got to tell you, unless you're a political junkie, they're probably not that interesting. But we're going to be live streaming, and so again, our majority leaders informed us all to just remember you're always on camera, so. Just do your work, and and just remember that, and so but that's fine. I think the folks that want to need to be able to see their legislature at work. So again, we work for the people, and so we'll just see. Just hopefully that the cameras on, and I'm hoping that a lot of the colleagues don't decide that that's an opportunity to do a lot more speechifying,
Right.
because obviously that slows down the committees, and I like to move fast. Maybe that's my attention deficit kicking in.
I understand, and I also understand one thing that wasn't in the budget was a makeup artist for people before they go on camera.
Well, that's really, I think somebody put in a budget amendment for that, but we didn't have the money, so.
And also at the subcommittee level, I understand now there are recorded votes.
That's correct. They've had now most of the committees that I have been on, I'm trying to think back to last year, most of mine, had recorded votes anyway. So now it's just some did, some didn't.
Sure.
But most of my votes, I think obviously something's going on the rocket docket, and there's no contested. I mean, we might have a voice vote, but usually I think I've been doing most of recorded votes for a while now, but it'll be universal now. So.
Sure.
And that's a good thing. Sure.
It is. Why are those subcommittees so important?
Well, the subcommittees, particularly in the House, we have so many bills that it's good to kind of vet them in the subcommittee process rather than, because you can just get through them faster, rather than try to tie up a whole committee's time, particularly if you're trying to amend bills and fix bills that are kind of close to being good, and so you can get them in a proper order, and then we'll refer them on up to the committee. But again, a lot of bills sometimes are, just need a lot more work, and so the subcommittee will usually just perhaps lay a lot of them on the table or whatever, so the chief patron can perhaps work on them and bring them back next year. But it's really a time-saving mechanism to just get through the mountain of legislation that we have on the House side, because again, we have 100 members.
Sure.
I mean, I'm sure there's probably 2,000 or 3,000 bills have been introduced, or certainly at least 2,000. So again, it takes a lot of time, and the subcommittee process works extremely well.
But to the extent that you are pursuing a particular piece of legislation, if you don't get it through the subcommittee, the chances of it making it that session are pretty slim, I take it.
Well, it is pretty slim. That's right, Woody. But again, the full committee by a majority vote can request that a bill be brought up to the full committee, and that happens occasionally. And but it's somewhat rare, and but it can be done. That's correct. So
now we were talking a little bit about your district composition and the counties that you have constituents in. Talk to us about your district.
Well, the 55th House district is about 2/3 of it is Hanover County, Western Hanover, kind of from Hanover Courthouse west. I have approximately the southern half of Caroline County. Going up from Hanover up to like the Bowling Green and over to Lady Smith and west to Spotsylvania. And then I have the very southern part of Spotsylvania up along the shores of Lake Anna, which is called like the Partlow, Blades Corner area over to Route 208. And so it's a pretty large district. I'd estimated approximately about 600 square miles. And it takes me a little bit of time to cover it some days, but I get out there and try to see as many people as I can. But it's a great district. I love the people in my district.
So what's the economy like in the district overall?
The district is very diverse in that we have in the Hanover area a lot of commercial development and industrial development, and particularly along the 360 and the 95, 295, Route 1, and even to a lesser extent the Route 33 corridors. So there's a lot of that, and then in some in Caroline along the 95 and Route 1. And then after that you see a lot of agriculture and a lot of timber. So it's very diverse from from a lot of commercial industrial to retail, and then services, and then to agriculture and timber, which, by the way, is the largest industry in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
It is. It is. As a matter of fact, we were talking to Delegate Barry Knight about that earlier, how important, he's one of the few farmers in the legislature. But yeah, give us an order of magnitude. I think he mentioned statewide agriculture directly impacts positive revenues by $91 billion a year.
I couldn't remember the exact number, but it's in the tens of billions of dollars for folks that are actively involved in the production of either agricultural products or timber, or the companies that process it, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, obviously the labor involved. So it's a huge industry. And I think Virginia has grown mightily also with their agricultural exports. over the last several years. And of course, one of the biggest growing parts of Virginia's agriculture has been the wine industry, which is growing in leaps and bounds. So, yeah.
Now, to what extent do you have farmers in your district?
It'd be hard to put a number on it. I mean, I know of just, I don't know
Right.
how many, I couldn't say,
Right,
but
right.
and actually my wife Patsy and I, we live on a little small family farm that her family that lived on and worked that land, and it's just a small land that we lease out now, but we like obviously seeing crops grow, and it'll always be working land, I guess, as long as we own it. But it's a lot of land in agriculture in this district. Yeah.
Let's focus on some of the legislation that you are
Yes, sir.
pursuing this session. Certificate of Public Need. Talk to us about that. Why it's important. Why are you pursuing
Well,
it?
the certificate of public need is something that has been in kind of, what would be the word, that regulates medical services and institutions like, say, for instance, hospitals and all. You know, if someone wanted to, say, we want to erect or build a new hospital somewhere, you would come to the state agency and get a certificate of public need, so where the government, I guess, agencies and all would decide, you know, if it's suitable to provide this service. Again, I come from a business background initially, and again, I kind of believe that the free market ought to decide what's the demand for goods and services. So this has been an issue over the last several years, as you know, Woody. The majority of my constituents from the survey that I've done in support of reforming or either eliminating the certificate of public need. So actually, I had an imaging center come to me and requested legislation to be introduced to provide them with an exemption from the certificate of public need process. And I said, well, I'll be glad to introduce the bill. There are actually several others. I know Delegate Roxanne Robinson has one. But again, this is an imaging center where folks could go to get an MRI. I think they quoted me for about $500. And again, I think a lot of your hospitals may charge, 4 times that much. So again, it's about providing greater access for less cost.
Sure.
And, where I come from, that sounds like a good idea. So, but we'll see what the Health, Welfare, and Institutions Committee has to say about that.
So this would be a way to increase competition as well by
absolutely.
lowering. Now,
Yeah.
would your bill just create an exemption, or would your bill do away with the certificate
This
of
bill
need?
just creates an exemption for
Okay.
this one entity. Now, again,
Okay.
I'm not sure if there's still some comprehensive COP
Right.
bills out there. I kind of
Right.
hope there are, because we've been discussing this issue to a great deal over the last couple of years. So I think we need to come up with a better way to.
So what's the nature of the opposition to it? Do we have entrenched institutions that
well,
don't want?
absolutely you do. One thing I learned in Economics 101, it's called rent-seeking behavior.
Okay. Okay.
And large industries that are already established obviously don't like to do all they can to prevent competition from coming in. Now, that being said, the healthcare industry, again, is a little bit different in that a lot of our big major hospitals, are required, by law to basically accept anybody that comes through their door.
Exactly.
Whether they can pay for it or not. So again, I think as a state policymaker, we have to recognize that they need to be, I think, given some special consideration, because we don't want, separate entities coming in and then, of course, cherry picking, the good patients and leaving the hospitals in a tough situation. So I think that's been a lot of the debate in the state, trying to resolve that issue. And I think one of the ways we do that is also to require these new folks that are coming in to also provide some level of charity care. I think maybe a way we can do that. But that's kind of the debate that we're having here.
Kind of interesting. Sort of like the U.S. Postal Service, which has a requirement to serve everybody everywhere, including rural
Yeah.
areas, and you
Yeah.
have the FedExes and UPSs of the world who don't have that requirement.
Yeah.
It also harkens back to a debate that's at least 2 or 3 years old here now, and that had to be with Uber and Lyft.
Uber and
That
Lyft,
whole
there's been a
thing.
lot of growing pains with
Right.
Uber and Lyft and
Right.
things, but yeah,
Right,
absolutely.
right. Or the I'm trying to remember B&B, whatever the rental.
Yep, the
yeah.
short-term rentals.
Right,
we
the
call
short-term
it.
rentals,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. And I thought the local governments, I think, had some heartburn with that.
Right.
And within reason, because I think you get into some zoning issues. But it's
Right.
again, the technology is just, I guess, progressing a lot rapidly, or more rapidly than the legislatures can keep up.
Sure, absolutely. We're always lagging behind. Now,
Yeah.
to what extent, because you mentioned I-95 for some of your constituents who may work up north, for example, to what extent do you hear complaints about transportation issues in your district?
We hear some in my district, particularly in the northern end of my district. There's some concern, obviously, with making improvements
Right.
on 95, kind of north of the Rappahannock River,
Right.
where folks are trying to get up to the northern Virginia area where a lot of them work. I know we're having some major improvements to that corridor, and I think the southbound lane of 95 to the down to Falmouth is going to be improved. I think it's maybe in the process of getting done. One of the things we've been worried about in Hanover and also in Spotsylvania, though, is the smart scale, the House Bill
Yes.
2
Yes.
issue, which
Yes.
is we've been concerned that and of course I guess every local government can always say this, that we're not getting our fair share, but right now the way the Department of Transportation.
That's the criteria they use to determine where the money is going to go.
That's right. The way they use the criteria to weight projects that will get the funding. Well, the Northern Virginia area and both Hampton Roads have a special provision where they can tax themselves, and then of course they use that money to bring more money to the table, and then
Right.
it of course makes their projects look more competitive.
Right.
And so they're getting a lot of the smart scale projects. Now again, I think smart scale is a great idea. It focuses our resources where we're going to do the most good, and obviously move the most vehicles. But that being said, we should revisit maybe
Sure.
some of that criteria so that the areas that maybe don't have taxing authority can be treated perhaps maybe a little more equitably.
Right. Now, in terms of your district, especially the Lake Anna portion, what supports the economy over there? Is it a lot of tourism and recreational activities?
It's a
over there?
lot of it's a lot of agriculture, Danny.
Oh,
Woody.
okay.
Actually, it's a lot of agriculture and timber, but that area is changing a little bit, just similar to Hanover, where you kind of folks are moving even out a little bit past the suburbs, where you get the the 10-acre lots and things like that. So a lot of those people are working in Fredericksburg or Spotsylvania,
Right.
Stafford. But there's still there's an awful lot of agriculture and timber still in that area. I think down there by the lake, I think there's a lot of like retirement places
okay.
where a lot of folks are retired, or perhaps a lot of those houses down there, maybe second homes for folks. But yes, there is a lot of tourism down there, though, particularly in the warmer months. And of course, we have the Lake Anna State Park is
Right,
down there, which
right.
obviously gets a lot of
Right.
use, and a lot of obviously the lake and whether the camping, the water sports, the fishing. So it's
Sure.
a lot of activity.
Sure. You mentioned exports in relation to agribusiness. One of the big economic drivers, as you know, is the Port of Virginia.
Oh, absolutely.
Talk to us how the importance of that port, especially now.
When I'm in front of a lot of the business groups, I'll usually talk about the Port of Virginia. I was on the finance committee, which we dealt with a big bond package a couple of years ago to put some money into the port, approximately $350 million, which goes for improving the infrastructure in the port. The big cranes with
Yes.
offload these new super, Panama Canal tankers. We've got money for dredging the harbor out to, I believe, 55 feet to accommodate those new vessels. And it's just a huge economic engine for the Commonwealth of Virginia. The average citizen in Hanover and Caroline probably does not appreciate that, but the fact is the port accounts for about 10% of Virginia's gross domestic
That much,
product.
10%.
So it is huge. And there's ports up and down the East Coast that obviously want to take our business. And like Charleston, Savannah,
Right.
Jacksonville. We're knocking on the door with New York. And of course, I hope they're not watching this show, but we're coming after them because we want to be number one. But that's just a huge engine. I supported that bonding package to refit the Port of Virginia, and it's now making money, and it's just a huge engine for the state. Yeah.
Now you mentioned those post-Panamax ships. Those are those huge ships now
Yeah.
that can get through the Panama Canal because the Panama Canal was enlarged over a
Yeah.
period of years. So
Yeah.
that's why now we have a real competitive advantage at that Port of Virginia.
Absolutely, and not only that, with the new infrastructure we put in, these humongous cranes, I forget how many of them, but we can basically bring two of those big cargo ships
Right.
up to the dock, two of them at the same time. We're basically guaranteeing a 24-hour turnaround for those ships. Where you pull in, we're going to have you offloaded, and you're going to be on your way back to wherever to pick up another load, I guess, in 24 hours. So I'm not sure how many other ports can do that, but not many.
Now there's also a fairly large distribution center, I believe, in Front Royal. It's called, there's an inland port there.
So the inland port, I'm not as familiar with that, but I know it's there, and I think that's primarily, for probably for the trucks, and I'm not sure if that's a railhead or not, but we do. It's probably, my guess, like a hub and a spoke,
Right.
So
right.
folks can get on Interstate 81 and then run that north-south corridor.
Right.
So absolutely, and again, this is just when you're moving goods and from point A to point B, that's commerce.
Sure.
And that's a good thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned bonding, and of course, when the state issues a bond, it's basically borrowing money.
That's correct.
And the state of Virginia has fared well in terms of its AAA bond rating.
Absolutely.
How important is that to your constituents and just statewide? Why is that important?
It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's AAA bond rating is the coin of the realm. It's obviously a source of great pride. We're one of the, I think, maybe 10 states that has what we call a AAA bond rating. And what that means is that we save millions of dollars on interest because, again, we're actually pumping in a bunch of money into our rainy day fund in this upcoming budget in order to let the big, we call them the bonding houses up in New York and others know that we're taking care of our finances, and that's integral to maintaining our AAA bond rating. Now, again, if you look at our debt to GDP ratio, I always remind people of this. In Washington, D.C., the federal government, their debt to GDP ratio is approximately 100%. In Virginia, it's around 2.5%. So again, we don't borrow a whole lot, and we always make sure that we can pay it back with interest.
And of course, they can print money. The Commonwealth can't. The Commonwealth has a constitutional requirement to balance its budget.
Absolutely, and again, and that's a good thing. It requires folks like me. You have to learn how to say no a lot of times, and and that's not a bad thing. But yeah.
Talk to us about education in your district, especially K through 12.
Well, education is a huge priority across the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's the biggest part of the state budget, and it's obviously very important in my district. Of course, I have Hanover County Public Schools, Caroline, and Spotsylvania, but I just know that education is a huge priority for my constituents. And I think for the most part in my district, we have really very good schools. Don't quote me on this. I think almost all the schools in my district, I think perhaps all of them are all fully accredited. There may be one, something hanging out there, but I think we're all fully accredited. From what I've seen, the parents are engaged in their school systems. They take ownership of them. And so I think that's really what makes schools great. You know, as legislators or local school governments can do a lot, but I think it's that active involvement of parents and others and the business community to make sure our schools are up to snuff. And so I'm extremely proud of the schools in my district.
What about charter schools? I think the Commonwealth only has maybe 5 statewide. I assume there are none in your school.
I don't believe there are any in my district. We have numerous private schools. We have a lot of homeschoolers in my district.
Yeah.
Again, I support charter schools. I support any new ideas. I think we need to try new things. I've never been one to say, let's just do it because that's the way we've always done it. I think we have opportunities to try different things. I think our children are things are changing with respect to technology and virtual schools, for instance. Right. I supported the virtual high school.
Yes.
I think that Delegate Dickey Bell proposed. I think that's a great idea. I think we need to think outside the box and just be prepared to, for 21st century, ideas with respect to education. I would think we may not recognize public education in 20 or 30 years, perhaps. And technology, I think, is going to drive a lot of that. Yeah.
And what about, I think there's still a few remaining issues in terms of standards of learning, especially in terms of the number of tests.
Yes, the General Assembly, we've, I think, cut out about 5 standardized tests. We have a report that just came out from the State Board of Education with more will be recommendations, which the General Assembly will consider this session. Again, I've been a person who has supported all that. I mean, I think it's great that kids can do well on tests, but sometimes they don't measure actual learning. I'm more concerned that what our students can actually do and not necessarily that they're good test takers. So again, I think we need to look at that and evaluate, if that's really measuring the things that we want measured. So again, I support those reforms, and absolutely.
What about at the community college levels? I know that we're starting to concentrate on new technologies. For example, I understand the field of cybersecurity. At our community colleges, youngster or an adult can get some type of training in 2 years, and their jobs that are there at $80,000 a year.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, the community college system, I think, is probably the single greatest thing that Virginia did in the 20th century. Was starting that is, the education is one thing, obviously, but it just gave folks an opportunity to further their education. But it's a huge economic engine for the Commonwealth for the reasons you talk. It allows people to go back and get work credentials and other things, not have to go, for a whole college degree, but just specialized training. I remember going back myself and taking some computer classes.
Right.
So it's great for that, and it's going to continue to expand.
Great. Thank you for being here, Delegate Buddy Fowler. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Woody.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans. Mm-hmm.